All right. I am here with my buddy Seth. Seth and I go way back. My name is Kristin Louise. And if you guys heard the snazzy new jingle, tell me how you like it. This is going to be the first episode that has the new intro. So, welcome to Seth and welcome to the Up if you've never listened before. Um, I want to introduce to you a friend of mine that I met online. And every time I say that, I'm going to give the disclosure that Seth and I have never dated, and we didn't meet on a dating app. We just met working online. I did that for Nicole last week, and it was a hoot. So we never dated. We didn't meet on a dating app. We met online, but Seth did actually slide into my DMs, and I want everybody to hear the abbreviated version of that story. Seth, let's have it.
The abbreviated. So what? So did we work out it was 5 years ago or 4 years ago?
I think it's five. I think we worked that out. I think it was 5 years ago now. It was 2019.
5 years ago, was that pandemic time?
It
Either
was like
way,
the beginning.
just
Yeah,
before.
the very beginning.
Yeah, either way. So I run an Amazon business, and at the time I was selling used books, and I kind of had the business semi-automated. So I was only working a couple of hours a day, and I was kind of a bit bored in the hours between working and
Love it.
maybe doing a bit of exercise. So I thought I'd start a Facebook group about selling books. And the only way you
Why
can
not?
get people to come into that group, because it's not really like a traditional social media where you can like post and people see it. I had to
Right.
kind of do some grey hat tactics, as it were, to try and get members in. One of those grey hat tactics, which works quite well, is joining other groups that are similar, so Amazon seller groups or maybe even other used book groups, and then looking at the
Right.
members, maybe looking at active members and dropping them a DM and maybe telling them, hey, I've got this new group that's better than this one. Do you want to come check it out? And that's what I did. But I sent this DM to Kristin. I think she left me on red for a few weeks, possibly, and
Yeah,
then
I think that's about right.
decided I wasn't a total creep,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then proceeded to join the group and be a very active member, definitely a top star member. And here we are. Here we are 5 years later. I don't know. There's like 1,500 members in that group, but I have not been in it for about a year just because I'm over social media. But yeah, that's pretty much the start of it. And then we've been internet friends ever since, and
We have.
potentially going to meet in person in a few months,
Can't wait.
hopefully.
I know. Can't wait. So much to unpack here, really. But if people have been listening to this podcast, they are confused because they don't even know I have an Amazon business. So let me back up. My podcast was actually named by Seth. Seth, thank you for helping me with the name of the podcast. That was last year. We were both kind of on a journey of some type. I don't even know what journey we were both on, but we were chatting last year and we were talking about podcasts in general and like our favorite ones and what we like. And sometimes it just takes a friend to brainstorm with you and to come up with something. And I was like, I really love that. Like that serves a lot of purposes for me. And then I decided to finally do something with it this year. 2024 is going to be the year. Don't you think, Seth? This is the year.
I totally agree.
I think there's a lot of exciting things going on in both of our lives. And the funniest part of that is the most exciting thing in either of our lives is not Amazon anymore. It's not social media, which is how we met, and it's not Amazon. How hilarious is that?
Yeah, true. I guess we've
We've
not
evolved
automated it, but we've evolved, but also worked very hard on that so that we don't need it
very
to be our
hard.
central focus anymore, which is kind of cool too.
Oh man, like honestly, that's the end game for me. And I know it was for you too, because you didn't like sending DMs and you didn't really want to run a Facebook group necessarily. You were bored, which I think that's really fun that you said that because you were. And you were just like, I'm going to do this with my time and I don't know what else to do. And so then I was like, I have some questions, would you get on a call with me? Because that's what I do. Like I'm fearless. I ask whoever, whatever, I don't care. And you're like, yeah. So that's how we became friends because I know a lot about marketing. So we just got to talking. And all those things are really great. We share a passion of fitness. We share a passion of selling, obviously. But like all these things we had in common. But Amazon was like the thread that was keeping like this little group of booksellers together for so long. Gosh, I'd like to say we had like a year and a half to 2 years pretty active in your Facebook group. I mean, that was kind of a lot, like that was significant. It was during COVID. So a lot of us were like feeling very isolated. And I can remember like bookmarking the group and like going there every day and feeling inspired by that group and like feeling like I'm not alone in my challenges. So thank you for providing that corner of the internet for all of the booksellers at the time. And I want to give a spoiler alert because I want anybody that's a bookseller presently that knows both of us to know that we no longer sell books.
Well, I still have a few in my inventory,
Right.
but
Right.
they'll
Oh,
be
what
they'll be leaving the warehouse in like
in your
October.
what, Seth? In your what? You have a few in your what?
Or my inventory.
Ah, that's not how we say it over here. We say inventory.
Isn't Oh, inventory.
Gets me every time.
Inventory. Yeah, I mean, apples and oranges, potato,
Right.
potato.
Potato. Sounds better when you say it. But anyway, point is, we both have a few stragglers, around, but we're not really actively buying and selling books anymore for the first time in, gosh, since we've been on Amazon, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was 100% of my
Right.
inventory for
Inventory. And at one
inventory
point,
for
you told me
five
that you
years
would never
plus.
not sell books. Did you not?
Did I say that?
You said
Wow.
that. You said bullish on books. You said stop.
I like
You
to
said
flip
stop
flop on
asking.
things. So I'm happy.
I'm
I'm
not
happy to
beating you.
change my opinion. No, I know, but I like being wrong and also changing my mind on things. 'Cause I think that's the sign of an evolving human. So I think it's a
Man,
good thing.
let's talk about that. I'm gonna nix what we were gonna talk about. Let's talk about that because that is just like a common theme that's coming up in my life right now. I have another close friend, and like one of the things he asked me after we got to like really know each other just through working on a project, he was like, does it bother you when people disagree with you? Like just straight out asked me because I was having some trouble with another person and I was like, I don't know how to work through this. Do you have any thoughts? And he's like, does it bother you when people disagree with you? And I was like, no, not at all.
A good
I
question.
actually I actually don't think that bothers me at all. And what I told him was exactly what you just said. I don't mind it. And I want to change my mind. If somebody presents better information, I gladly change my mind. It's not a thing about being right for me. It's a thing about like finding truth and learning and evolving. So, what do we think is cultivating that mindset now that we both don't buy and sell books anymore? What do you think brought you there, Seth?
Well, I think the main thing is actually just because books was becoming very difficult to manage.
Yeah,
I grew my team very big. I think I had maybe 9 or 10 virtual assistants at one point,
yeah,
and then I was giving them free reign to buy books, and then I wasn't checking them enough. And then when I got to a point where I started checking all of their books, and
yeah,
when I was checking them, they were buying good deals. They were buying books
sure.
that were profitable. They were going to sell quickly, and then as soon as I stopped looking at their work, it kind of their quality tumbled off a
Right.
cliff. And then I realized that I'm going to have to work really, really long days to keep this business going at the rate I want it to. And also, if anyone else in the book business knows, it's very difficult to build a book business to say financial freedom, which is where I want to get to,
Yeah,
unless you have maybe your own warehouse or you have a college used connection or whatever, which I don't have
sure.
because I'm in London. I'm selling
Mhm.
on the US
You were selling
market,
in the
so I don't
US. Yeah.
really yeah, so I don't really have access to that sort of infrastructure. So I realised
Mhm.
I need to just change, and so it was more of what are the ways you can change? It's out of like pain or what's the other one? But either way, I was kind of changing out from pain really
Yeah,
because
sure.
I realised my business was at this point where I couldn't really. It was actually tumbling a bit because I found it
Mhm.
more difficult to find good books. So I realised I had to find a new avenue, and that took a few months, took a little while to work out, whilst also trying to do other
Mhm.
business ventures that since didn't work. But that's all
We don't
part of
even
the
have
that's
time
all
to
part of the fun,
unpack
isn't
those
it?
today.
No, no, that's definitely a story for another day. But either way, I think I kind of went into mini panic mode, but
You did,
also
yeah.
the mode of I need to find a way to become like more profitable or build a bigger business. And I want it to be Amazon because that's what I know. That's where my expertise is. And the last thing I want is to go back to a desk job 9 to 5 because
Right.
I would
That's
honestly rather kill myself.
that ship
So
has so far sailed. Like to think
yeah,
about that in my life. I was just actually talking to one of my best friends, and I like he was like, what did he say? I don't even remember what he said about his day, but he works for somebody else. And I was like, yeah, I can't even imagine having that day. Like, because I just wouldn't do well with it anymore because I've been on my own for years and years and years.
yeah.
And
Imagine
I
someone
just,
telling you what to do, and also telling
mm,
you that you have to come in at 9, even if you say, "Oh, by the way, I will get the work done if I come in at
yeah,
12." Like you can't. There's no flexibility, is there? Everyone knows this, but that would just get me so much that even though the same amount of work's going to get done, maybe more,
sure.
if I worked from home, they're like, "No, you have to come to the office." That
Yeah.
would just that would grind my gears so much.
In the famous words of Randy Jackson of American Idol, it's a no from me, dog. It's a no from me, dog. I
It's a
just
big
can't do
no.
it. And I think after 7 or 8 years, whatever it's been for me and whatever it's been for you, it's been about the same. I just wasn't always doing Amazon like you were. Um, just that freedom. Like people say this and it sounds so cliche, but just hear two common people on the internet, okay? We're not pushing anything to you. Just hear us say that like freedom is priceless. Like, woof. Like whatever you got to do, if you have it in your heart to make yourself free, you'll figure it out. And I think that's the thing. Like you kind of pushed out of fear. People can also just push out of persistence, like you can do different things, but like that fear, you can either let it consume you or you can let it push you. And I think you and I are a very similar mindset of like we're going to figure it out. Like I'm going to ask and DM whoever I have to ask and DM. I'm going to call Amazon every day if I have to get my account reinstated. Like I'm going to do whatever it is that I need to do to figure. And if it's not Amazon, I'm going to do something else. Like I'm not married to that. It's a great opportunity, and we're both making a lot of money on there. So like, don't shut me down, Amazon. Love you, but like, if that ends, I believe in myself, and I believe that something else is out there. I'm not going to throw the towel in on entrepreneurship. That's just the mindset that I have. And I think it's the people that you surround yourself with in the conversations like this that don't normally get recorded, because one of the things we were talking about, I always like before we do a podcast, you kind of bring somebody off air and just talk a little bit before the interview. And one of the things that Seth and I were talking about was I used to be part of this Amazon mastermind, and I didn't realize how much I actually missed that. Just like chatting, it wasn't like a problem solving situation. There wasn't a formal agenda. It was just like a monthly meetup of the minds, so to speak, and it was virtual. That is super valuable. Like whether it's in person or whether it's virtual, but just kind of like having people that are going through, like having that community aspect to what you're doing. Because being an entrepreneur can be super solo and super lonely. So now you said you had 10 people on your team, and that was like too much. Like it was not going to scale for you with books. And I felt the same way. I didn't even want to get to 10 before I was like, I don't see this scaling. The math isn't mathing. There were some new booksellers that were coming in. There were people selling lists. I just saw the writing on the wall. I didn't like what I was seeing. And honestly, I wasn't as married to books as you were. I love books. I own so many of them. But it wasn't like I couldn't see myself scaling that business to the point that I knew I wanted to be at. And so I was already like way over a year ago researching other things and wholesalers, and you and I had kind of talked. And I remember the one conversation we had, you were in the WeWork. I think maybe you were even in Mexico at the time. I can't remember. But at that point, you were like, it's a no for me. Like, I'm sticking on books. I'm in books. I know books. And I'm thinking, okay, like, as a friend, okay. And then we eventually both got to the conclusion of wholesale somehow. We both kind of got there in our own timing and in our own businesses. So, what was the driving force other than just not being able to manage the amount of people and the amount of books? But what convinced you on the wholesale side?
Yeah, that just got me thinking that it's like a breakup from your first love, isn't it? Books. That's what
Yeah,
that's what helped me
books,
to quit my job. So I was
right.
I was thinking, oh, I've
You
got
were
to make this
loyal.
work, and it was also it goes to like limiting beliefs. I was
Yeah.
convinced I was like, me not being able to achieve this is just a limiting belief. But then I just got to the point where maybe if I toiled away, I could have made it work. But
Right.
when I looked at the options of OA, online arbitrage, and wholesale, I just
Mhm.
realized that the opportunity is way. way bigger and it's much more scalable, and you can actually have a smaller team and make more money. So it just made so much more sense. And I think also we've spoken about this a lot, that the skills that you gain from selling used books transfer over perfectly to the wholesale and OA business model. So I was able to take my business that was kind of ailing a bit, and it was probably doing like $60,000 a month
Right.
this
Right. People
like
don't
this time
understand
last
the
year.
magnitude. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, so it wasn't really in trouble, guys, but like for us, that's
It
not
wasn't
what
in
we did.
trouble, but also the margins weren't very good on that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
obviously I'm saying not very good, but yeah, I was only making a few
You were doing
$1,000s on that
fine.
60,000.
You were
It was
doing
absolutely fine. Don't get me wrong. But going from, say, doing maybe $120,000 a month for September before,
yes.
which is textbook season, so that's a really big month for the booksellers. It got me thinking, why can't I have those months every month? Or
Yeah.
why can't I have more than that every month? So yeah, that's basically the main reasons why I hopped over, and it's doing very well now because I've almost 10xing what last May was this May,
Okay, Grant Cardone.
which is pretty crazy. 10x rule.
You've been to one too many summits, haven't you? No, I'm just kidding. I like him. I don't know him, but like I like the principle of him. I think he's a little abrasive, but I think a lot of my favorite people are, including myself. So
He's a bit too
um
salesy, isn't he? I think
well, yeah. And I don't want this to be
he
about
is a
him.
salesman.
He
Yeah,
is a
exactly.
salesman, and I don't want it to be about him, but I like the principle of the 10x because I absolutely believe that.
Yeah,
Some of the
it's a good
events
concept.
I did go to an event and it was very not what I thought it was going to be. So anyway, off of the Grant Cardone, read the 10x rule if you haven't read it. Great book. Seth and I, not only did we sell books for years, he sold them longer than I did. They were the first love, Amazon. But we both read a ton. Like that is something that the people that I'm closest with in my life, I find the people that I vibe with. And like Seth and I don't talk every day by any means, but when we do, it is always in depth and meaningful. And those people read. I'm telling you right now, you guys got to read. So Seth, hit me with something that you've read recently. Could be any topic that you just absolutely love.
I feel like I've got my Kindle actually. I need to have a quick
He's,
look.
he's just going to take a look. I have a book to show you, Seth.
Oh, please do.
I want to know if you remember this.
Yes. Did it not
Do you remember
sell?
that? So it never sold, and I relisted it
Oh, mine
twice,
mine did.
but then I read it. It's such a good book. Did you ever
It's
read this
really
book?
good.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
because that yeah, no, it's a really good book. A lot of people, I think it's on so many people's reading list of best nonfiction going,
Yeah.
but people don't know that that is the first Sapiens. So that's what most people will know
Yeah.
the book as. Yeah.
Yes. And
Very good
it
book.
actually, ironically, this you might find this interesting. It actually came up in a sermon that I listened to about a year ago after I had bought it. Isn't that
Oh,
interesting?
really?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. But no, I had already bought this book. So the story behind this book, guys, and then Seth will give his recommendation. But I just wanted to show him this because I ended up hanging on to it because it kind of felt sentimental. So Seth was like an unofficial mentor to me for like probably the first 6 months that we knew each other. And I would just pick his brain because he had been in the game longer than I had. And then we started talking on marketing and it just became more of a business, just colleague friendship kind of a thing. And he told me he found this book on Amazon. No, on eBay. And he said, I can't buy this one because I'm not from there or whatever it was, whatever reason you couldn't buy it. I don't remember. But he was like, this is a rare book. I'm really into rare books. And guys, if you want to get my attention in life, tell me you're into rare books. That's going to get my attention. I'm way into rare books. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it was super cheap. It was like less than $50 for this copy. And I had not read this book, and I also love to read. And so I was like, well, I'm definitely going to buy it and list it. And it never sold. But honestly, I think the reason is just for like the memory of this, because that was really what got you and I talking about books, was talking about this one and like why you were so interested in it. And then I realized we were both into nonfiction. And so then we really started talking about books we had read. And I just decided after it didn't, I listed it again and then it didn't sell. And I was like, you know what? I don't really care. Like, I just want to keep this book, but it is fantastic. So that's going to be my book recommendation on this podcast episode. And I'll link it. But From Animals into Gods, A Brief History of Humankind. And let me tell you, this book is incredible. Like, the book is so good. So, what's your book, Seth?
No, I just wanted to say how interesting that book is. I read it a few years ago, and it just, well, it kind of just encapsulates the whole human journey, doesn't it? But the one thing I loved about it was when he goes in and talks about corporations and how they've kind of
Yes.
become like people, and
Yeah.
it's almost that they just got me thinking a lot on down a rabbit hole of how that's there's a lot going wrong with the world, and that is probably one of the biggest reasons why, because corporations can act as people, and
Right.
they can therefore control populations almost. That's
And
just a bit of a side tangent there, but it was
it
that kind
is
of
a
back in
side
my mind there.
tangent, but I'm going to take it one step further because when I was reading this book, I was going to a different church than I'm going to now. And in our First Steps program at that church, there was a note, like I was a presenter like in that program, and there was a note about corporate worship. And I had just read this book like days before, and I was like, corporate worship. I'm so confused by the dichotomy of that. Corporate worship. Like, you know what I
I've
mean?
not heard
Like,
of that.
it doesn't
Yeah.
sound right. It doesn't sound like two words that go together. And they were written right there on the page that I was supposed to read, and I didn't read them. I was like, I don't understand why you would put those words together. And I like had a big question afterwards. I always have big questions. So anybody that knows me, what's your nickname for me, Seth, by the way? Remember? The Missouri Inquisition, the Spanish
Oh
Inquisition,
right,
but
yeah.
I'm from Missouri. That's going to be the episode name, so people would have already seen it. But I used to just ask you question after question after question about Amazon,
They were
and
good
you were always,
questions though, so it never bored
oh,
me.
true. That's true. You do have to, if you're going to be a question asker, you do have to have good questions, or else people are going to really, yeah, they're going to kind of, but no, it was typically a great conversation and you were always kind to answer them. But this book, like, honestly, if I got nothing else, I've gotten so much from our friendship, but this book was worth it right there. This is a great recommendation. So thank you. And let's hear your next recommendation.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling a bit. Well, obviously, we kind of want to give a non-fiction one because
Yeah.
we've had a more non-fiction chat. But I don't know if you want to talk a little bit on. So I went for a phase of reading, just a self-improvement phase, and it actually started nearly 10 years ago. And I feel like that self-improvement phase of starting reading self-improvement books, listening to podcasts like Tim Ferriss,
Yeah.
like meditating, and just generally
Yes.
trying to become a better person. So over the next few years, I pretty much read every single self-improvement book out there. And then in hindsight, I realized that probably I was kind of just like not information overload. I didn't need to read that many.
Yeah.
Do you agree that with the self-help books, you kind of only need to read like
Oh,
5 to 10, and they've all got the same points? But for some reason, I felt like I had to read 100.
right.
So
And I
and
did
because
too.
it's so long since I read them, I kind of don't really have any. Don't think I've got any good ideas on the best ones because they are all so similar.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be self-help. I agree. I read tons of them trying to fix myself and fix others in my life. I thought if I read enough, I could just solve my own problem. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not the case. So I'm
Yeah,
going to give a spoiler for anybody out here. You got to do the work. For me, it involved a therapist, but it doesn't involve that for everybody. Um, but that's my journey. But I read so many. I think you and I had gone through, I used to have a Goodreads account and I don't have it anymore. But I think you and I had gone through at one point and there was like 20 something self-help books we had both read. Like it was nuts. But they are the
yeah,
same. Like they are largely the same, which is why I'm not going to ever write one. Because I'm not interested in that anymore. But they helped me. There was a few that really helped me. So if you have like a standout from that genre, like that, just like if people only read one, let's say they're not reading presently, or like they're a busy person, and do you have any standouts? It could be self-help or it could just be nonfiction in general, just something that
yeah.
really like was meaningful for you.
I'm looking through my Kindle just to try and come up with one that's not just obvious. Because whenever I listen to podcasts and people will say something like Atomic Habits or
Yeah, I
Subtle
know.
Art of Not Giving
Right.
an F, and I'm like, I really
Yeah.
liked the Subtle Art. Didn't actually
Hmm.
think Atomic Habits is very good, but it's just everyone's already heard that. So I'm trying to think of a good example
Right.
that people might not know. One that comes to mind just because it's popped up there is there's a guy called Derek Sivers who's been on the Tim Ferriss podcast a few times, and he's written a few books, and He's the guy that started CD Baby, which was
Yeah.
the first time, do you know, like first time I think MP3s were on the internet and he was selling them and he made loads of money. And I really respect this guy because he sold his business and then realized that he's totally got enough money for the rest of his life. And all he's been doing since is like traveling. He's got a boy now who's maybe like 7, 8 or 10. And all he's been doing for the last, since CD Baby, he's not been making any money. He's just been living off, I'm guessing, the interest from that. And then he's just been writing books. And his books are really, really poignant. And his whole thing is that you don't need to write a 300-page book. You can write all of that in 50 pages. So all of his books are really short. So I can't think of one in particular, but I think all of his books are worth reading. One of them is called
How
How to
many
Live,
does he have?
I think he's written maybe 5 or 6, possibly. Some of them are really, I think 2 or 3 of those are really short, 2 or 3 are a bit longer. But I actually had a hardback copy of one of them, and it's just like super good life advice that's really just succinct, to the point. And I think he walks the walk. He's not a salesman. He's not selling anything. So you know what he's telling you is what he's learned along the way, and he's not trying to sell you a course or a product. So anything by him would be my suggestion. That's a bit more niche.
And I did listen. I know exactly who you're talking about. I did listen to a podcast episode because one of the things you and I connected on immediately was Tim Ferriss. Like, I mean, you know, if you listen to podcasts and you read books, like you've got Tim somewhere in your lineup. And so I do remember hearing some episodes, and I never read any of the books for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe because they were short. Because I am just such an in-depth person. Maybe I was like, you know, but I am on a journey presently with being concise, especially as I'm learning how to be a better writer, because I can just slam a lot out and it can be meaningful. I can write well and it can still be meaningful, but it should be similarly meaningful if I can make it more concise as well. So that's been a big challenge that I've been doing some workshops and stuff around that recently, because I do have this book deal and I'm working through it, but it doesn't need to be any longer than it needs to be. You know, like I need to be able to get the words on the page and not just the pages out, quality over quantity. So that's been the way that I've kind of been, just as like athletes prepare for whatever, you know, a writer has to prepare. And so I've been doing some classes on that and really learning a lot. I've also been, you and I just have a love of learning that we've shared together, you know, and like you taught me a lot and you taught other booksellers a lot, but also we just learned from other people. Like we were just in similar groups learning from other sellers and just absorbing a lot of information. And I think that's a key quality to people that I know that are like just driven and have the right mindset to succeed, because you have to want to learn. You can't make a shortcut to succeed in business that I've seen. I haven't seen a good shortcut unless you started out with a bunch of money. But you and I both didn't start out with any money. We literally just started out working jobs and then putting our paychecks into these businesses.
And maxing out credit cards, which is not advised.
But when you pay them off, you get a lot of points, don't you?
That's true. That's very true.
And we've both taken a lot of flights with those points, haven't we?
We have.
I'm not saying go max out credit cards and don't pay them. That's not the message today, gang. I'm just saying there are really some benefits, and people are afraid of credit cards. Like I talk to people all the time that are just afraid of it. Well, yeah, be afraid of it if you don't have the money to pay it off. But if you have a business mindset and you want to do something like Amazon, it's going to require a line of credit, credit cards, cash investment from an angel investor. It's going to require something if you want to grow. You can't just take $1,000 and grow it to $1 million. That's not how it works. Like you're going to have an infusion of capital because it requires inventory, and then you'll make the money back, and it's a cycle. But those points have done a lot of really amazing things in my own life. So I don't want to, you know, brush past that. But I will link those books. I will link those in the show notes for everybody because I want to read them too. I always love it when somebody recommends a book that I've never heard. Well, it's not that I never heard of it, but I never read it because I'm just such a quick reader. Last question, and we're going to keep Seth for a two-parter here. Last question. We're going to do like a bite-sized chunk and then another bite-sized episode. And in the next episode, I want to dive even more into business specifically. And my last question for this one is, we've never talked about this. Are you a speed reader?
No, I'm not. I think I've been very interested in speed reading.
Yeah.
I've done like a lot of research on it. I think Tim Ferriss has
Yeah.
done a few episodes on it. There's that guy Jim
Yeah.
Quick, isn't there? I think
Yep.
he's around. I would love to say that I tried any more than that. Like I didn't try hard enough with it. So I've gone for the approach of just read a lot, enjoy the process, know that
Yeah.
you're never going to read as many books as you want. And sometimes, yeah, reading one good book and skipping the ones that you're not enjoying, over reading 10 is just better. So I'm just going for I'm not going for the volume approach. I'm going for the enriching and trying
Yeah.
to absorb as much as possible. But I would
Well,
love
I
to
think that
be able to
speaks
read
a
loads of
lot
books.
of you. That speaks a lot of you and your character. I've done both approaches, but I was just curious because we never talked about that. And that is a big Tim Ferriss thing. So we are going to have Seth back. We're going to talk more about business. And I really want to dive into the specifics of minds. Here we go. And we're back with my buddy, Seth Baker. Bullish on Books is the book that you're going to write, right, Seth?
At some point in the far
You're not
future.
committing to a timeline on authoring. Okay, got
Not
it.
quite.
Listen to our first episode for sure. And I'm also going to link a bonus feature. Seth interviewed me a few years back. I think it was about 2 years ago now, about our journey on Amazon individually, like how we both got involved in book selling on Amazon. And it's a really in-depth conversation. It already exists. So I'm going to link our episode number 1 on this podcast, The Up. I'm Kristin Louise, if you don't already know me. But we're into part 2. And this episode is titled, What's the Tea? What is the tea, Seth? What's good, my friend?
A lot is good, and we were just chatting off air how this tea phrase is. Well, I've only just found out about it this week by watching Love Is Blind, some tragic reality TV, which I actually really enjoy, and it's also obviously connection with the Brits, as I love a cup of tea. So hopefully we'll have some good business chat this episode.
And guys, I did ask, and the Brits really do love tea. It's not an act. Like he was literally just drinking some tea. So
yeah, I really want to know how many cups of tea get drank every day in the UK.
He's going to Google it. It's happening.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was just a thing that we all think of when you think of, like the UK and England, you think of like, oh, tea time, like if it was just an American thing, but it's not. He assures me there's a lot of tea being drank across the pond. So
yeah, apparently
it's not
according to the Independent, which is a reputable newspaper in the UK,
yes,
61 billion cups per year.
That's
quite
the
a lot.
tea. That's
That
the
is
tea.
the tea.
I love the phrase. And ironically, I had just written a social media post with it, like literally yesterday. And then Seth brought it up. But back to reality TV, back to Love Is Blind. I don't watch a ton of TV, but sometimes I'll read fiction books and I will watch some trash TV just to kind of, unload. And we had a really interesting sermon about that recently at church. And it was about dumpster fires and how you look away from things in life. And reality TV is just one of those things that if I look at, I can't look away. It's a dumpster fire. It's a perfect example. I think in the sermon, he used The Bachelor, but same principle goes for Love Is Blind. Same
yes.
principle.
Me and the girlfriend love The Bachelor too. We watched the latest one. We actually watched it whilst we were in Jamaica, which was like our first long holiday. So it holds a place in our heart because we could watch it at a normal time rather than 5 hours in front. So
what a sentimental guy.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Great show.
I love that. I haven't watched The Bachelor in a while, but I sure did watch Love Is Blind. And let me tell you, you guys need to check it out.
Yeah, both are just the most hilarious concepts, and they're just baffling, and it just really makes you think, what's the universe come to? But I'm here for it, and like you say, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you end up tuning in to the next ones.
Like a dumpster fire, like a train wreck too. Like you can't look away. Like what's going to happen next? My thing with Love Is Blind as well, or any reality TV, is from my perspective, I'm super empathetic. So I can only take it in short doses because I feel for these people. So I'm so emotionally invested and I'm like, how could they let this happen? Like, it's the producers that are letting it happen. Like, clearly there's a bunch of things happening behind the scenes and the puppet, masters, but I'm too empathetic for reality TV. So I have to take it episode by episode because otherwise I can't binge it.
Yeah, but I also just thought that I think another reason we probably both like them is because I think we like our psychology, don't we? And like watching
Oh,
real humans doing real things
oh
and
yeah.
and and trying to dissect why they have made the bad decisions that they
Yes.
have
Oh,
is
like,
hilarious. And it's just so good to like feel like I'm the expert looking in, even though I don't really know anything, but it's just funny to pretend.
you know, what would be funny is if you and I were producers of that. Because I think it would be hilarious to mastermind like the inside of it. Like also sad,
Definitely.
but
Yeah.
it would be interesting, and I would do it once just to say I did it. One of those things. I'd do it once if I had the opportunity. Um, so that brings me to something else that I didn't tell you before, but I just have to ask you now because right now, as far as Netflix goes, there is only one thing going on Netflix in America. And do you want to guess what it is?
I have no idea.
Okay, you're not gonna guess. Because I guarantee you nobody gives a crap about it there. Bridgerton. Have you even heard of it?
Ooh, I don't know if it even rings a bell. No, I'm not
Oh
sure.
my
What
gosh.
is
Okay,
it?
well, first of all, you're a man, so you're not the target demographic. The ladies listening are cackling
It's
right
not on my
now. The hint,
suggested.
it's not on your suggested, I hope.
No.
Anyway, we'll talk later. Ricky Martin, we'll talk later. No, so Bridgerton is like an epidemic here in the States, and I'm part of it. I'm in. Um, Bridgerton is a story based it like it's fiction, okay? It's not real, but it is like royalty. You know, think like Downton
It's like
Abbey, but
Downton
sexier.
Abbey. There you
But
go.
sexier. Yeah, it's
Okay.
exactly what we're dealing with here. And it's just an amazing like the creator of Grey's Anatomy is the person that created it. And like there's so many people like me, I grew up with her. And so like there's just so many people that are just following it. And it's a little racy, it's a little risque, way more than Downton, but I was a huge Downton fan. Like I'm big into period pieces and all of that. But the only thing you can hear about or speak about right now since the release last week is Bridgerton here in the States if you're a female. Like, I mean, that's just all anybody's watching and talking about. And people are like boasting about there's just 4 episodes of this season so far, and people are boasting about how many times they've watched them. That's what's
Sounds
happening.
like Netflix marketers have nailed it with the brief there.
They've absolutely crushed it. And honestly, well done, Netflix. Like I've watched all 4, not more than once because I don't have that kind of time on my hands, but I've watched all 4. But it's funny because you've never even heard of it, and it's because it's about your country and you guys don't care. Like,
Yeah,
you
but we
guys
love
care about
Downton Abbey
Love is
though.
Blind.
So yeah.
Yeah. But you know how
But
it
no, I
is.
know what
Like
you
it's just
mean.
interesting the separation there because like you guys are more interested in Love is Blind. That's what's on the top of your feed. And we are
Yeah, and
going
like
crazy.
things like I don't know if Tiger King was as big for you, but it was so big over here because I think
It
it's
was
just
huge.
it's yeah, it's just how crazy that story was, and it
Yes.
was just yeah.
You know, it wasn't filmed far from me. Did you know that?
Oh, wasn't it? Was it not Texas or no?
It was Oklahoma, I thought, and Oklahoma's
Ah,
super close
yeah, no, it
by.
might
Like,
be.
I mean,
Okay,
within 6 hours. So
yeah,
I'm here in Missouri for those of you that are listening, and this is not a podcast about Netflix. Sorry that it became one.
yeah.
But
Sidetrack.
anyway, I
Side
always
note.
find it interesting. One of my favorite things about meeting people online is, and for business purposes, not dating, but like one of my favorite things about meeting people is just like, I don't know what happens there. Like, I wouldn't know unless we talked about it. Like, it's interesting to me because I've only ever lived here. So, and Seth and I are going to be meeting later this year. Finally, we've known each other for like 5 years now, and it's just I don't know. It's fun. It's fun to talk to like I've got some clients that are in Australia, and I keep really close with a bunch of people from Canada, and I don't know. It's just really fun to hear all of the different like just eccentricities of where we live and the tea. That's the tea.
See, exactly.
But if you didn't listen to episode 1, as far as the first part of our interview, go back and listen to that if you want to know more about Seth and I and how we met. We're going to dive in because I want to talk a lot about meditation because that's something that we both do and we both really benefit from and believe in. And Seth, how long, like, I think it was before I even met you. How long have you been meditating?
Yeah, so I briefly mentioned in the last episode that I went on this huge self-improvement path, which started about September 2015. Oh,
Mm.
wait, so it's only 9 years. Um, I only remember that because I was in Australia and I was just in a particularly like maybe kind of dark moment of my life where I was a bit like lonely and I was out kind of on my own, went traveling on
Yeah,
my own, I had a really great time and then kind of didn't know what to do next. So
right.
I started diving into self-help books, listening to podcasts, first one of which is Tim Ferriss project, which I've pretty much listened to every episode of. And a lot of the episodes a lot of his earlier episodes back then would talk about meditation. He'd have people on that were either experts or people who had benefited from it. So I'm hearing these big business people or meditation teachers and experts, they're talking about the benefits of meditation. So I thought, well, I'm absolutely going to start doing that because it just makes sense. And also because I did have a job, but I kind of, because I was traveling alone, had quite a lot of free time to just experiment with just doing whatever I wanted. So I figured I could probably spare 10 minutes a day just to do a bit of a meditation. And also at that time, I got recommended the Eckhart Tolle book, Power of Now, which I know now is kind of, I mean, it was pretty big then, but now it's obviously like massive, it kind of exploded around that time, I think. For some reason, that book just spoke to me. And I know I've spoken, I've recommended it to other people, and they either don't get it or they just think it's too simple or they don't like it. But it hit me at the right time, like perfect time. So I started meditating whilst reading that pretty much. And I've kind of never stopped since. So is that like 9 years, nearly 9 years? And I kind of went down loads of internet rabbit holes of how to do it, what to do it. Because I know that there's people get really struggle on that first step of like, what is it? Like, what do I do? I just sit down and just, and then people think that just because they've got loads of thoughts that they can't do it. And that stresses me out a bit, because my girlfriend will even say that. She'll say, oh, but if I sit down for 5 minutes, all that happens is I start thinking about stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
You have to push past it.
You've got to push past it, and getting to the point of no thoughts is very difficult. And even like really experienced meditators will struggle to get to that point. So you've just got to realize that thoughts will come, and you've got to bring yourself back to the meditation object, which can be anything. It can be your breath. It can just be you looking out. You don't have to do meditation like in lotus position with your eyes closed. You can have your eyes open. You can be like looking at a flame, like in a dark room. That can be your object. Your object can literally be anything. It can be your body sensations. So it's kind of, you find your meditation object, and then you should try and stick with that too for as long as, like, really stick at it, because you don't want to be moving around between different meditation techniques, I don't think. So then you're kind of just never going to get experienced in one.
Unless it's not working for you. That's the one thing that I would tell people is
for sure.
cycle through.
I think you need to give it a good go before you make that decision, like, oh, it's not working for me. Like really give it, like, I'm talking months, like 6 months minimum, and until you think, oh, this one's really not working for me.
Did you do any guided meditations?
So I started not doing any guided at all. I was just doing the breath. So I was doing Vipassana. So I did that for years, and then I kind of transitioned into just open-eyed, like, awareness, just like taking everything in. So I think they actually call that do nothing meditation, which worked for me because I thought it was the simplest possible. You do nothing, you just look out, and then do nothing. And then I also did sign up to Waking Up app probably about 5 years ago maybe, and I've had that ever since, which I would recommend to anyone. It's a bit costly because I think it ends up by being like $10 a month, but not only does it have guided meditations, it's got a ton of those, but it's also got loads of different Q&As and different speakers, and it's also got theory in it, so you can learn about Buddhism, you can learn about mindfulness. So it's pretty much an all-in-one app. Like, there's other ones like which I haven't tried, so I can't recommend. But this one is just so good, because Sam Harris, the guy that runs it, he just keeps adding content, and he even added one today that I've been listening to that's really good. And some of the speakers just really speak to me, and I'm sure they will for other people who try it. And then they've also got this 30-day introductory course, which I think everyone quite likes doing. And then there's off the wall things like there's talks on like free will, which are really interesting because it makes you wonder, like, do we have free will and stuff? So I recommend that app. That's like good for getting people going. But meditation is great, is my overall thing. But I know a lot of people beat that drum, but it's really hard. You can't make someone do it, can you? It's like, I feel like people have to. You can lead people to it, but it's so difficult to. I just don't know anyone who actually does it. I've actually, like
You
we
don't
were
know
speaking in the
anybody?
last. No, not really. Like it's like you were
Really?
saying in the last episode. You were saying about how you went to that business mastermind. None of my
Yes.
friends are entrepreneurs as well, so I'm kind of
Mm,
this solo island who's
interesting.
entrepreneurial and like meditation. So speaking to someone like you, or that's why I find my
Interesting.
podcasts are like they're my way
Yeah,
of conversing with people who have who have these things in their lives that kind of my friends don't.
that's very
Yeah,
interesting. I assumed you had some entrepreneurial friends.
everyone pretty much all that works a 9 to 5. Yeah, which
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with, but it's just
No,
that's the
it's
way
not
my
for
friendship
me.
group has panned out for
Yeah,
whatever
for
reason.
sure. And it can be difficult because I think there's a mutual respect that I have come to find over years with certain friends. Because at first, a lot of my friends had no idea why I wanted to do what I was doing. And they found it very strange. And almost some of them were like, it was off putting to them. Like, she's quitting her job. I mean, like, this is not a good example, you know? And then here I am 7 years later, whatever it is, and doing different things that to them seem bold. And what I found recently in my life, a big theme of my life, has been that God is shuffling the deck. And, you know, the right ones stay, and some people are just for a season. And the ones that are meant to be with you will find a way back. Like, I don't push for that connection anymore because it needs to naturally happen. And I used to try to push for connection to people and to stay connected just for the term of longevity.
Mm.
And I just, as I find myself more through meditation, through prayer, through multiple aspects, I don't find the need to control that anymore, which is great. I did an episode maybe 2 or 3 back that was called Stories of Surrender. And it was just kind of the moment when I surrendered my own life. And I just was like, I am not in control of this. But meditation is something that a lot of my religious friends, they don't think that it is similar to prayer, and they think it's like the opposite of prayer. And I'm here to tell you, you can pray and meditate simultaneously. I've done it multiple times.
Yeah, I figure they're so interchangeable, aren't they?
Right.
For
But a lot
sure.
of my friends that are like Bible Belt friends, which for those of you across the pond, if you're listening from Seth's pool, then you don't know what the Bible Belt is, but it's the middle of America and it's super religious. And a lot of my friends, I live right in the middle of America. And a lot of those people, they look at it as something they A, don't understand, and B, don't want to. And maybe they're afraid of. And I can even remember there was this church that we used to attend, and like they would question Hu Chang, who teaches Tai Chi, like about Tai Chi. And I'm like, this is an exercise. Like, this isn't a religion. Like, it's an exercise. It includes meditation at the end, but it's an exercise. I mean, there's no sermon, there's no book. I mean, there's nothing, you know. But what I find is that generally people have a hard time accepting what they don't already understand to be true. And that's why it's so enriching connecting with a community of people. And I don't want to use the word like minded because that's the cliche word that everybody says. But like, certainly that was like you and I when we connected on Amazon. It was like, oh, this is a person that has like a similar mindset and is
Mm.
doing some of the same things and reading the books that I like. And we listen to the same podcasts. And so it was like, oh, that's a natural connection. You know, that's just going to be somebody that's going to enrich my life. But another thing that I have found through meditation and prayer, because I do see them as very similar, um, another thing personally I have found is it has aided so much in my acceptance of people that aren't like me. That peace, the peace in the valley, like I would be so edgy, especially like I think about elections, and we're having a big one in America again this year. And the last election cycle, I had to jump off of social media because it was so toxic for my health. And you guys, it's different there, but aren't you having one soon, like July or something?
Yeah, really soon because there hasn't been one.
Yeah.
There has to be one every 5 years. So
Right.
the 5 years was coming up, I think, in next January. So the government now have decided to call it because they think it's obviously the best time for them to win, even though they're definitely not going to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets very divided. But it's the same thing with the Israel Hamas thing in the UK. I'm sure it's the same in the US,
Yeah.
but in the UK, it's so divisive here,
Right.
and it's like you say, it's something to make you want to go off social media because everyone who's got their opinion are so fixed in their opinion,
Yeah.
and they will like fight you for
Yeah. Oh,
for
absolutely.
their truth, and they won't let you have your opinion, and it gets really aggressive, and
It
it's
does.
just it's so toxic. It's horrible. And so I try to just stay out of it, because whatever I think's right is wrong for someone else. So, and
Right.
also what you were saying just then makes me think of the whole control what you can control,
Yep.
don't worry about what you can't control. And yeah, it's tough times.
It's interesting though, and I wanted to bring it up because not only because we both meditate, but we live in two different countries and two different forms of government, but we're still fighting the same battles, are we not?
Yeah,
And I don't
definitely.
mean that literally, I mean it figuratively. Like I don't mean battles as in soldiers. I mean, we're still both going through the same processes and still having the same like feelings about social media. And so I don't want people that are listening to feel social media is something that I talk a lot about because I'm a marketer. And so anybody that's listening that is like, where's she, heading here? Um, if you're feeling negative about social media, there are other things you can put in place, such as meditation. That's just one, but things you can put in place in your life that will make you more even keel and make you feel a little bit more peaceful and will help you process the thoughts instead of feeling like you need to rage them. I was feeling ragey when I was on social media in 2020. I just wanted, it was also a pandemic, so like double whammy, but like I was just feeling like I wanted to attack people, and that's not in my nature. That's not how God created me. Whoever you believe created you is fine, but like that's not who I am. So I needed to get off of there and I needed to figure out a change. I needed to make some changes. And a big part of that was prayer and meditation for me. And the other thing that you and I have connected on recently, well, not just recently, but in the past, is gratitude. And that was one of the first things I remember, like our first call that you and I had, like our first Zoom. I remember just really talking about daily method of operation. Like, you were outside of you had already quit your job, is what I'm trying to say. And so I was asking you, like, what you're doing every day. And because it's curious to people that haven't quit their jobs, like it's kind of like we want to know more. And gratitude was a part of your daily practice. And it wasn't from this book. This is a book that I'm just wanting to recommend to people. If you're not watching this, if you're listening, 52 More Weeks of Gratitude by Lisa Ryan. It's one of my favorite email lists that I'm on. Seth used to have a bomb email that came out all the time and then he quit it, but um, it's fine. I'm not mad at you, but Lisa Ryan is awesome. And she has an amazing website that I'll link in the show notes. But to me, when we think of conversations like this and being open-minded and talking to people from you're not necessarily from another culture, but you kind of are. You're from another country, which is different than my own. And we were still able to find so many similarities to each other. But even if we couldn't, to me, gratitude and meditation are two amazing weapons that we can pull out of our arsenal to give us the mindset that can help us achieve, whether that's business, whether that's fitness. I mean, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, there's a thousand things that people are working on in their lives all the time. Um, do you want to say a little bit about your gratitude practice personally?
Well, I'll actually hold my hands up and say that I have not been very good with it recently, and I've found myself to, like, sometimes, because my schedule is quite loose and I can do what I want, I'll sometimes find myself bored and annoyed that I'm
Yeah.
bored, and I realize I need to bring back the gratitude here and realize that if you look like 6 years ago, Seth looks at today, he'd be so grateful and he'd be
Yeah.
having the best day ever, just because I don't have to get up at 8 o'clock and get on the London Underground
Yeah.
and deal with a horrible job he doesn't like. So I think I need to like reintegrate it back into my life, but I find it hard to do because I think we've spoken about this. Where if you do something like say the three things you're grateful for and write them down every day, you end up potentially getting quite bored of doing that practice, or you end
Yeah.
up start saying the same things and then you don't get creative with it. So I need to find a way of integrating it more creatively that's going to keep me doing it. If you've got any suggestions, I'd love to
I
hear them.
do. I do. One thing that I started about 3 years ago that's been really good for me, and it came from this book, is challenging myself to find 10 things throughout the day. I put them in a note in my phone. Um, I don't carry a notebook, but you could carry a notebook or you could just do it electronically. 10 different things every day. And then you'll start being grateful for everything because you'll start to see the good in literally everything because you're looking for it. And a grateful thing could be, yes, I was late. I was like 15 minutes late for us to record this morning. But a gratitude as I'm looking back at my day is that you were kind and you were like, that's okay. You've got a daughter, you know, like it wasn't like I didn't work in an environment anymore. I was not in a toxic work environment where I felt like I couldn't be 1 minute late because I had that before. So that would be an example of just finding, some people around here call it lipstick on a pig, but I try to keep these episodes practical. And I think that that would be an awesome, even if you just found 5, maybe 10 seems like a lot for a lot of people right now. But even just finding 3 to 5 would be an amazing way to kind of reshape your day and end it on a good note.
No, I really like that because well, it rewires your brain, doesn't it? It's exactly the same as meditation. Both of those practices rewire your
Yes.
brain for more contentment, more satisfaction with your day to day, and less worrying and less anxiety.
Yeah.
Um,
And aren't those the goals?
yeah, exactly. So
Those
I
are the
don't
goals for
struggle.
our age group, my friend.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't struggle with meditation just because it was so profound when I started doing it that it's something that I will always stay with me just because I know the benefits of going from having a very busy mind to one that's less busy was so key. But the gratitude thing,
All right. We got cut off there, but we're back. And I was talking about this book and I was talking about finding things in my day. Like it really was a game changer for me about 3 years ago to make it a goal to find things in my day. Have you ever heard of people that do peak and pit of their day?
never heard of that. No.
So that's a big one. And I don't know if it's an American thing or not, but like I have several friends and they do this as a family at the dinner table. So the high point of the day and the low point of the day. And that is so you get kind of an accurate view. It's not all roses, you know. Um, but the peak and the pit is one thing. And then another thing that I commonly hear is if you have a significant other, like a spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, at the end of the day, you share with them the top 3 things you want to achieve for the next day. And that person becomes like your accountability because if those things don't get accomplished, maybe they can help you think through a solution or just be a sounding board for you if you're stressed about it or, you know, whatever the case may be. So, that being said, I feel like with gratitude and finding gratitude in the day, some people are like, well, I'm grateful for the air that I breathe. That's not what I'm talking about. Unless you had lung cancer, then you're grateful for the air that you breathe because you have a reason to be, you know, like that makes sense. So it is one of the euphemisms that we use over here is putting lipstick on a pig. So some days are harder to find gratitude than others, and it can be difficult. But um, today I have to go and have a procedure done, for instance. The day that we're recording this, I'm going to have like a medical, like an exploratory procedure, and that's happening this afternoon. But what I did, and this helps my mindset, and then I want to hear what you do, is I scheduled things intentionally in this morning that would bring me joy, like having this conversation with you. And then I'm going to have another meeting in about 15 minutes with a client that I just absolutely love. And I did those things knowing that it was going to be kind of a tough afternoon, but like to balance the day out for me mentally. And since we have control of our schedule, we're able to do that. But what other things do you do that affect your mindset?
Well, no surprise for most people, it's probably similar, but like fitness is massive
Mm,
for me. I've been going to the gym for going to be coming on 15 years now.
yeah.
And then I've also started running really seriously this year.
Mm,
So I've been running for like 5 years, but just as a hobby. I've
yeah.
actually got a coach now and I'm going to run a marathon in
Wow.
December. And I
What?
tell you what, that yeah, so it's really helped my day-to-day like contentment and happiness and satisfaction because humans love goals, don't they? And
Yes.
especially
Yeah.
someone like me, a bit more type A.
Sure.
Sometimes I feel like business is going well. I need something else to focus on. So this is the perfect thing because 5 days
Hmm.
a week, I've got a schedule that my coach has given me. I've got gym routine that's surrounded around it to
Yeah.
optimize. And like I feel like I wake up every morning. I'm like, so what's today then? Like, what have I got to
Yeah.
do? And then on the rest days, I'm more grateful for the rest days because I feel like I'm
Mm,
working so hard on the other 5 days. So that has really helped my contentedness. And then just having hobbies, I think like
yeah.
an active hobby. Mine, for example, is playing guitar. I love it because I can pick it up whenever I want. I can
Yeah.
practice whilst I watch Netflix. it's
Yeah.
the easiest thing for me to do. And obviously I can do more in-depth study on YouTube or looking at books. But those are two things that are so key, like having a goal, having this ambitious wanting to run a sub 3 hour marathon in the,
Mhm.
and I started doing that training in February as well. So it's quite a long way away, but my brain works in the way that even though it's really far away, I treat every workout as building up to that day.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, it's true. Like it's really just helped my um my mindset and mental health this year. So I think I'm going to try and take that on for as long as my legs will carry me. Whether it's
Mhm.
doing a triathlon, or maybe
Yeah.
doing an Ironman, or doing like a 100-mile bike ride. I think I'll always do something endurance based because I've seen that it really like brings me up throughout the day.
So, Seth knows this, but you guys don't. I actually just in between recording the 2 episodes that Seth and I are doing, I was talking to my trainer because I recently got a personal trainer and he's done several Ironmans. So, I don't know a thing about it. Okay. I have an injury. I'm not going to be a runner anytime soon again, but, um, that mentality interests me. The mentality of somebody that does an Ironman absolutely interests me. Like, the whole thing that he and I connected on, he knows how to help with knee injuries. So that was a big one because I have a huge knee injury. But the whole thing that that person, that trainer and I connected on initially was high performing humans. And Michael Jordan, he likes the NBA. And so I was like, well, I like Michael Jordan. And he's like, well, he doesn't play anymore. LOL, you stupid girl. And I know that, guys. I know that. But I've read a lot about Michael Jordan because he's a fascinating human and a super high performing and like on the mental level, like just amazing to like you and I love psychology, Seth. And so we've talked about that a lot. Didn't you study it also in college?
Only at the 2 years before college, so
Yeah.
we call it sixth form, but
Okay.
whatever you are, 15, 16. So I did study it for a bit, but yeah,
Yeah.
I found I'm
And
more
I did.
fascinated by it after school,
Yeah,
which is interesting. But I've read so many books on psychology.
me
Um,
too.
always
And we're
interesting.
both type A and, just very similar mindset. I want to know, have you done your Enneagram? I've never asked you this off camera.
I haven't actually, but it has come up quite. The universe has presented it to me
Mhm.
a few times over the
Yeah.
last few months. So I do feel like I need to do it. I think I might have done a really basic one years ago, and I can't remember the result. But I feel like I'm going to put it on my Trello to do one.
Good. Oh, and we both love Trello. It's just and
It's
guitar.
going on
Like I'm
now.
not a guitar player, but I'm a guitar lover. That like was an instant connection for us because we talked about music and you love the Red Hot Chili Peppers and I love the Red Hot Chili Pepper. Like so there's
Yeah,
just several things that we talked about like guitar technique and I'm just such an appreciator of music and I love to
I've
sing.
got
So there's just well, he's gonna there you go. Look at that,
for the
guys.
people
Right.
not watching. This is
Yes,
a
that's true.
knife painting of the guitarist of Red Hot Chili
Of the Red
Peppers,
Hot Chili
which I
Peppers.
bought from America, and it got lovely delivered to me a few days ago, which I'm very happy with.
Can you say America again?
America,
It sounded like you said
America,
America at the end, like an R,
America.
like America. I was like, oh, you also threw a weird, interesting R in Australia earlier. And I was like, where did that come from?
Did I? Uh,
It was like
Australia.
Australia. Like there was an
Ah,
R, like Australia. I was like, oh, okay.
Australia.
But it's just accents. Anyway, I don't want to get off of the thing, but we were talking about Ironmans. We were talking about your training. And I think it is so important as somebody who let her fitness go. And like I was a certified personal trainer not that long ago. Like so within the last 10 years, I have been a fitness instructor and a certified personal trainer. And then I let my own fitness go for a variety of reasons that I just recorded a story time about and did a podcast about last week. But as somebody who went through that and then had to go through the pain of getting back in shape again, and I'm in the process right now. There is nothing better mentally for me than a good workout. There's really not. And when we're depressed and when we're upset with things in our life, sometimes we think that that's not what we need. It is always what you need. If you're listening, go work out. Like
Always.
those endorphins are what you need. And I love learning about humans and I love learning about people that perform at a certain level and like what makes them tick. And so I think that was the thing about like this trainer. And I asked him, and Seth and I had a little intermission in between these 2 episodes. And so I asked him, this trainer, I was like chatting with him and I was like, would you do an episode with me? Because I think that that would be really cool to talk about mindset because he's done several of the things that you were talking about. And it's crazy because I just want to like, I kind of want to end it on this note, but I want to hear your thoughts on it too, Seth. In my life, by asking questions, I have gotten rarely any no's. If you ask people, they'll usually tell you what you're looking for. They'll usually give you the information, just like I asked you about Amazon, and you're like, I'd love to do a call. I'm like, sure, no problem. And here we are 5 years later, still chatting it up, and our individual lives are doing great. And, we've never even met, and we've just, been a support system in a way, and just somebody that we could have. But nothing bad in my life has ever come from asking questions, period. I might have thought at the time it was bad, and it just wasn't meant for me, is kind of what the universe was sending out at that moment. Like, if I asked a question to somebody and it offended them, or it led to something negative, it was because it wasn't for me. And I listened to a podcast, and I'll have to figure out, I have to go back and find the episode number, and I'll put it in the show notes, but it was about super communicators. Have you ever heard that term?
Not sure I have.
I think you might be one. I know I am. Questions are how I have lived my entire life. It's how I make sense of things. It's how I process information, by asking questions, both to understand that I understand something, so to confirm that I understand something, but then also to learn. Questions are how you learn. And the right people will love your questions. They'll answer them, and they'll like give you back more information, is what I've learned. So
And too many
by
people
you,
are, I was just going to say, too many people are scared to look
yes,
stupid. That's the
that's
main
exactly where
problem,
I
isn't
was
it?
going with it. Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
where I was going with it. So by you being okay with me just DMing you and asking you a question, and it's also okay if people don't answer. I mean, it's okay too, like you didn't have to answer, but that led to something really good. But if you didn't reply back, that wouldn't have been the end of my life either. I didn't know you. It wouldn't have been
Yeah.
the end of my world. So we put too much fear in ourselves about not knowing information, about trying to learn things that we don't already know, asking people. I just like, it was on my testimony. I gave my testimony earlier this year, and it was just on my heart then, and it's on my heart now. We should ask people who have what we want how they got it. And we should help each other. That's part of being like a human.
Absolutely, yeah, community. But the
Yeah.
nuance to your point there is that what I really appreciate about your questions was that I could tell you'd already gone to Google,
Yeah.
tried your
Sure.
hardest, you'd already tried to look to you, that you didn't want to
Yeah.
necessarily, you didn't think you needed to ask me the question, but you realized, oh, wait a second, this person's probably going to have a better answer than Google. So I really appreciated that, because I've had
You
questions
know
from
what?
people who pepper
Oh,
me
yeah.
with questions, and they're questions that Google or a Facebook
Sure.
group could have just a little search term could have,
Yeah.
and then I find that a little bit insulting, because it's like you're kind of wasting my time. But you were asking insightful questions that I was happy to answer, because I was potentially teaching you things, and then I was actually learning through teaching you, right? Because a
Mhm.
lot of people say that. So
Sure.
I think that's a very key point.
You know what? The thing that I just pick out of that more than anything, because all of it's true and all of it's valid, but we don't want people wasting our time. It's just the
Exactly.
truth. Time is such a valuable resource. And if you can do your due diligence before you ask a question, if you can really put in the effort and make it worth somebody's time, and then you can help each other. That's
And to show that
that's
you
the community.
care,
Yes,
and that
that's
you've
the
got,
community
and
that
that,
I want to be a part of.
yeah, exactly. And you've got the passion and the determination
Right.
to, not like someone could ask me a question and then they quit the week later, and then that was a
Right.
waste of time, right? Whereas I could tell with
Yeah.
you were going to make a go of it, and you have. So
There
that's
was some,
cool.
yeah, and there was some staying power there. That was one question that I had that we didn't get to in the first episode. So we'll just kind of wrap it there. I was asking Seth off air, I was like, what do you think is the staying power factor for people? Because he and I have seen people come and go like gangbusters. I mean, they come in, and it's the people that almost come in announcing themselves like they're too hot to trot that you just see drop off 4 months later, 2 months later. And you're like, where did that person go? Like, what happened to her? And it's because they came in too hot. They didn't have a steady approach, or they came in with an arrogance or something. I don't know. So what do you think is the staying power? What do you think is the secret sauce in business?
That is a big question.
It is.
Um,
I think it has to do with mindset from my perspective.
yeah, mindset. I think, and also getting a small win early, I think is really
Yeah,
key.
that's huge.
I
I love
think,
that.
yeah, I one of the first books I bought, I think it was like I bought it for $50 and sold it 150 very quickly, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
over $50 net profit in my
Mhm.
back pocket from 20 minutes searching on a book software. And
Like, I'm in.
I was like, wait, if I do this 50 times a day,
Yeah.
I'm quitting my job in 6 months, and that it didn't take that long. So it was the small win, and then once you
Mhm.
get that small win, knowing that this, like, you can make something from this, right? Like, not giving up when
Absolutely.
you get a small loss, maybe even a big
Right.
loss.
Right.
It's about
Absolutely.
looking long term. So I think a long term view, a long term view mindset is
Mhm.
really important, because I think early on I had couple of small losses and big losses, which could have maybe crumbled other people, but
Mhm.
I had resolve and resilience and stuck
Yeah.
with it, because I thought, in 5 years I'm not going to be thinking about this. This isn't like devastating. It's not going to crush me.
Right. Yeah. And like, to, if you don't have much to lose, that was how I was looking at it. I didn't have a ton of money to lose. So
Yeah. What's the worst that could happen?
what's the worst? I was going to put in a couple grand and lose a couple grand. People do that on a vacation. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like, to me, it was and we said this in our initial interview, so I think it's a good full circle moment. To me, selling books on Amazon, which is no longer what we do, for clarity, but we both still sell on Amazon, selling books was a predictable stock market because I had all the data to back it up. And I'm like, okay, well, I've lost thousands in the stock market. So, what's a couple thousand that seems more safe and predictable? Like, I'll give it a try. So to me, there was no fear, and I'm not a very fearful person. That's just not in my nature. And I don't know if that can be taught or not. I'm not sure. We're not experts on mindset. We're just kind of chatting here. But the wasting the time thing is huge, because if you have somebody you want to learn from, and I've had people come to me, the same thing with marketing too. Don't waste their time just as much as you don't want them wasting yours. I think that's super valuable to like see their acumen and to be like, what could I bring to this? How could I make this a mutual, like
Yeah. And
not
have that
just
respect.
me benefiting.
Yeah.
Yes. That's huge in people that I see that want to work with me. And I have been in a season of not taking clients, but taking clients because of that, because I have seen that from them. And I'm like, you know what? They want to do this work, and there's people that I accepted as clients that don't want to do this work anymore, so I need to make some changes in who I'm working with and where my time is going. So I think
Yeah.
that's
Attracting the
valuable,
right
all of it.
humans.
And that's hard, isn't it? Ooh, we
Yeah.
can have a
Yeah.
whole thing on that. It's a whole situation, but luckily it's gone well for us. And hopefully this episode has given people things to just take away and think on, books to read, because it's not like you listen to one podcast and your problems should ever be solved. These should be like tipping off points of like, I'm going to go do that, or I'm going to implement that, or I'm going to talk to somebody. It shouldn't be like Seth and Kristin just solved all my mindset problems, because we didn't. And those come from taking action, which is something that we are both good at, but we can't take action for other people. So I hope that this will inspire some questions, some great comments. Seth and I are both on YouTube, so we'll respond to your comments if you want. And yeah, thanks for allowing all of your time today. I know this kind of ran late this morning, but it was a lot of fun to get caught up. The way I look at this is it's just one of our, annual catch-ups, and we're just filming this one. So two
No, this is
birds,
awesome.
one
Thanks. Yeah,
stone.
thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Great
and
time.
good luck. Good luck with the friend's wedding coming up and all of the things that are going on in your life. You got a busy one. So
Yeah,
good
thanks. I'm
luck, my
just about
friend.
to run out to do the best man speech with my
Oh,
pal.
well, good luck, my friend.
Fun
I'm sure it
times.
will be
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you so much. And if you guys want to have Seth back on,
Cheers.
drop it in the comments. Cheers, my friend. Take care.